Coming up on The World Today, as more bodies wash up on Libyan beaches, authorities warn of the risk of disease outbreak. Plus, the U.S. looking at a possible government shutdown as President Joe Biden criticized Republican-backed fiscal plan. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Susan Ilian. It's been 5 days since the devastating floods in Libya, and sadly, more bodies of victims are washing up the beach shore. The collapse of 2 dams in the city of Derna made the situation worse, and there are now fears on the safety of other Libyan dams. So far, more than 1,000 people have been buried in mass graves, according to a UN report. But the World Health Organization and other aid agencies are urging Libyan authorities to stop burying flood victims in mass graves. The statement urged that victims should be buried in well-demarcated and documented graves, as a hasty burial can lead to a long-lasting mental distress for grieving family members. Between a divided government, destroyed infrastructure, and difficult logistics for aid teams, it's hard to get a precise picture of the situation. However, the official government's death toll as of Thursday is 3,000. Libya's UN ambassador has put the figure at 6,000. The Red Crescent organization estimates 11,000, and the mayor of Derna says it could be up to 20,000. Tens of thousands of people remain missing in Derna, and the UN says the city urgently needs more aid.
Volunteers in the Libyan city of Derna are coming together to help those affected by the floods. Some of the volunteers and medics are also retrieving bodies off the coast of the flood-hit city, where a torrent washed away whole district after 2 dams collapsed under the storm floods. A bakery in the eastern city of Derna distributes some bread for free to flood-hit residents in an initiative to help with the catastrophe in the country's worst natural disaster in modern history. Meanwhile, Libya's ambassador to the United Nations, Taha El Soni, is warning of a magnitude of death after a massive flooding.
The numbers are changing as we speak. I mean, the numbers are thousands. I mean, so far as we got confirmed bodies reached 6,000. But the missing, because the area that was hit had a population of 30,000 in terms of that area where it's direct hit. The whole city could be more than 100,000 plus citizens, there. But the direct hit came to an area where it's around 30,000. And as we speak now, many of those are either being in a rescue effort or missing because they were hit badly and when that happened. So I cannot really confirm the final numbers, but it's really a high level of magnitude, and I'm afraid we will hear really large numbers, maybe even more than what has been confirmed so far.
In the meantime, the World Health Organization is releasing $2 million from its emergency fund to support the victims.
WHO is releasing $2 million from our emergency contingency fund to support our response. We're deploying contingency supplies that were already in the country, and 28 metric tons of trauma, surgical, and emergency supplies are due to arrive tomorrow from our logistics hub in Dubai. WHO has also activated its network of emergency medical teams. 8 countries and organizations have offered their assistance, and a team from France has already deployed its field hospital in the affected area.
Rescue teams have arrived from Egypt, Tunisia, United Arab Emirates, Turkey, and Qatar. Among countries sending aid, Turkey sent a ship carrying equipment to set up 2 field hospitals as Turkish medical teams continue search and rescue operations. Italy, on the other hand, sent another naval ship, a team of firefighters and civil protection officials, as part of international aid efforts in response to the deadly floods. Similarly, 2 planes of the German Air Force took off from a military airport in northern Germany with relief materials to support flood victims. The Libyan Red Crescent has reported over 11,000 deaths from the disaster, and it's estimated that over 10,000 people remain missing. However, the mayor of Derna, Abdominan Al-Gaiti, said the deaths in the city could reach 18,000 to 20,000 based on the extent of the damage.
Meanwhile, in Morocco, authorities have announced plans to fund rebuilding of about 50,000 homes damaged by last week's earthquake. The government says it will be providing over $13,000 for the reconstruction of homes which have been completely destroyed and $8,000 for those with partial damage. In the meantime, residents will be given temporary shelters equipped to withstand cold weather, and each household will receive a grant of $3,000. Now, the exact number of people left homeless is still not known, but nearly 3,000 people have been confirmed dead and more than 5,000 injured in the 6.8 magnitude quake. Welcome back from the break. The economy of the European Union is facing headwinds. Economic growth in the bloc is set to be weaker than expected this year. Stubbornly high inflation and economic slowdown in China are 2 factors weighing on the continent's economy. Amidst the downturn, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen gave her annual State of the European Union address this week, where she announced an anti-subsidy probe into Chinese electric vehicles. With me here to talk about the flagship address is DW correspondent Marie Sina in Berlin. Marie, thanks for being here. Now, did von der Leyen offer any solutions to the EU's economic problems?
Yeah, so the EU's top official, Ursula von der Leyen, offered a solution by saying that she will protect the EU's economy against what she calls unfair practices. Now, concretely, she announced that the EU is launching an investigation into Chinese subsidies of electric cars. The reason that that's very significant for the European economy is the fact that China has been increasing its footprint of electric cars in Europe. Chinese electric vehicles are becoming increasingly sophisticated to a point where in terms of quality, they're now rivaling European car brands. But at the same time, Chinese electric cars are much, much cheaper than European electric cars. And the reason for that is that China has been heavily subsidizing this industry. The Chinese government has been pumping a lot of money into its electric vehicle industry, and that's causing an unlevel playing field, and it's ultimately hurting the European automotive industry, which is losing out on revenue, and therefore Europe also losing out on jobs, for example. And the reason that this is quite a triggering situation for Europe at the moment is that in the late 2000s, something similar happened in the solar industry, where China pumped huge amounts of money into its solar industry and caused dozens of European solar producers to go out of business. And now von der Leyen came forward and basically set the ball rolling to do something against this and to take a more protectionist stance by opening an investigation into these Chinese subsidies. And this investigation could end up in punitive tariffs being placed on Chinese cars in Europe, and it could ultimately snowball even into a trade war. So a very significant announcement this week.
But Marie, the automotive industry is especially important for Germany, of course. How would the probe against China impact Germany?
Well, it could have a huge impact, especially if China retaliates with tariffs on European cars in China, because German car makers have a huge stake in China. VW, Volkswagen, makes 40% of its global car sales in China, and Mercedes has its largest plant in China. And so that's why up until now, German car makers have been very quiet on this issue of Chinese subsidies because they worry about the ramifications of a trade war. And Mercedes already came forward this week saying that protectionism of this kind is counterproductive. So the German industry being very concerned about this development and being very critical of the point that von der Leyen put forward this week.
Well, how has Beijing really reacted to von der Leyen's announcement yet? Have they?
So yesterday, the Chinese Commerce Ministry commented and accused the EU of what it calls naked protectionist behavior. The Commerce Ministry issued a statement warning that this could have negative ramifications for EU-China relations. And how this plays out will likely already be seen later this month, where an EU-China trade dialogue will take place and where diplomats from both sides will meet to discuss economic relations. But what's important to keep in mind is that this step happens as EU-China relations are already rocky. One aspect or one reason for this is the fact that China sided with Moscow in the Ukraine war, and the EU has been very critical of that. But another important point to keep in mind is that this is marks another step in Europe's shift from the world's largest free trade bloc towards a bloc that's building trade defenses, and that's kind of going along with this era of deglobalization and of moving further away from economic cooperation with China.
All right, Ms. Maria Sin, thank you very much. And now to the United States, where President Joe Biden has criticized a Republican-backed fiscal plan he calls MAGA budget and warned that the U.S. economy and voters would take a toll as the clock ticks down to a possible government shutdown. The federal government would enter its fourth shutdown in a decade next month unless the Republican-controlled House of Representatives and Democratic-run Senate can pass a long or short-term funding bill, and Biden signs it into law. Now, the House and Senate are due to be in session for about 12 days before funding for the U.S. government expires on September 30th. In a speech at Prince George's Community College in Maryland, Biden listed estimates of what the cuts would mean to education programs and safety programs.
Your table, on your chairs, maybe not. Well, I thought my staff hand this out? You just have a little one. Well, I'm the only president who hands out the opposition's economic plan. Oh, you think I'm kidding? Protecting American Economic Security, fiscal year 2024, the budget, the study committee of Kevin Hearn, budget, and it goes on. This is the mega budget. You know, I want you to take a look at it. I think we have other copies of it. If we don't, we'll get you some. America has the strongest economy in the world of all major economics. And all they do is attack it. But, you know, you've noticed something. For all the time they spend attacking me and my plans, here's what they never do. They never talk about what they want to do. No, think about it. They tell you what they're against. What are they for? It's like they want to keep it a secret. I don't blame them.
The United States is facing a potential government shutdown if the fiscal year 2024 budget is not approved by Congress by September 30th. This all comes as Republicans are calling for an impeachment inquiry of President Biden, and while Mr. Biden reaffirms his economic plan, Bidenomics, on Thursday. For more on this, our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, spoke with the White House Deputy Director for the Economic Council regarding Biden's economic plan.
Thank you so much for joining us, as you are the Deputy Director of National Economic Policy. So we thank you for the Council. We really appreciate you being able to give us some insight into Bidenomics and really where we are. We know that we are in an interesting time as a country economically. So give us some big picture highlights as to really what's going on with the Bidenomics.
Yeah, Bidenomics is really about making sure that some of the economic trends that we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years that have been squeezing the middle class and depressing economic growth, that we're able to reverse those by taking a new approach. And when the president came to office, he wanted to make sure that we put more power back into the hands of working people, who have been squeezed over the last 20 or 30 years with lower wages and fewer benefits and less flexibility in the workforce. He wanted to make sure that working people got a fair shot at a good paying job that can support themselves and their families. And we're starting to see real progress on that front, with wages going up, particularly for those at the lowest end of the income spectrum. We've seen, according to recent surveys, the highest level of job satisfaction in almost 40 years, as employers are in a position where they have to compete hard to attract and retain workers rather than the other way around, where workers are fighting with each other for a few available jobs. The other big thing that the president wanted to reverse was the trend towards outsourcing jobs to Asia, to China, to parts of Southeast Asia, and so on. He thought it was important to restore American manufacturing and American production, not only because it creates good paying jobs, but also it makes us less vulnerable to the kinds of disruptions that we saw during the pandemic, where certain parts or inputs that we needed from Asia weren't getting here, and that meant that we, as American consumers, couldn't get what we needed. So we've made real investments, historic investments in American manufacturing, and that has prompted the private sector to make about $500 billion worth of their own investments in American manufacturing in places across the Midwest and the South and so on. So those are two of the big things that the president wanted to do when he came to office, and we're already starting to see huge amounts of progress in both areas.
You mentioned the middle class, and that's been a topic of discussion for quite some time now. You say that the job market for the middle class. Give us a little bit of insight into what we're actually seeing with employment rates for the middle class and employment rates as it relates to minority groups as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good news on that front. So when the president came to office, the national unemployment rate was about 6.5%, a little bit less than that. So pretty high by historical standards. His goal was to make sure that we got that unemployment rate down as quickly as we could. And by the end of his first year in office, the unemployment rate was already under 4%, which is very low by historical standards. And it has remained under 4% ever since. So we're approaching 20 months of unemployment under 4%. That's the longest stretch of sub 4% unemployment we've had in about 50 years. And we've seen really good news for subcategories of workers too. So the Black unemployment rate has reached the lowest point in history during this time period. Same with Hispanic unemployment. Workers with disabilities unemployment rate has been the lowest we've ever seen. And at the same time, the prospect of getting a good job is bringing people off the sidelines and into the workforce. So there's a measurement called labor force participation, which is basically the percentage of workers who are either currently in a job or actively looking for work. That rate has hit the highest level it's been in about 20 years because people know that there's good wages out there if they want to get into the workforce. So we still got some work to do, but what we have seen over the last 20 months or so is by most measures the best job market that we've had in the recent history of the United States. And that means real benefits for workers, higher wages, more ability to push for better benefits and more scheduling flexibility. And I think that that's showing up in the fact that worker satisfaction is at the highest level in about 40 years.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Hundreds of people, including auto workers on the night shift and their supporters, have gathered at a Ford assembly plant in Wayne, Michigan, as members of the United Auto Workers Union walked off the job to begin a historic strike. The first ever simultaneous strikes against the Detroit 3 automakers, including General Motors and Chrysler parent Stellantis, kicked off early on Friday after the union and companies failed to agree on new contracts. On Thursday, Chief Executive Jim Farley warned of a grim scenario if Ford acquiesced to union demands for a 40% hike in pay, an end to a tiered wage system that pays new hires less than veterans, and a return to defined benefit pensions.
Living adjustment, which has been part of every UAW contract since 1948 until 2009, when they said, look, we'll sacrifice, we'll take a hit so we can keep you all afloat. Now that they need help to stay afloat, the big three is, literally turning their backs on them. They're making record profits. It's about time to reward the very people for the reason they were even able to, again, survive, the Great Recession.
It's a shame we've got to be out here right now doing this because the companies won't take care of their workers who they want to call family. But I feel damn good and I'm damn proud to stand here with the VP of the UAW over Ford, the top AA, and all of our workers out here. These guys are the ones. This is what it's all about. All we want is our share of equity. We're not asking to be millionaires. We're not asking to join the billionaire class. We're asking for our fair share of the fruits of our labor. They deserve it. We went backwards in the last 14 years, and these companies have made $250 billion in profits. There's no excuse for it. They're raping society with the price of vehicles. It went up 30% in the last 4 years. CEO pays went through the roof. They're already millionaires. They went up 40%. Our workers got 6% pay increases, and inflation went up 19%. We're going backwards.
The Florida State Attorney's Office has released surveillance footage from Miami International Airport this week showing security officers from the Transportation Security Administration, TSA, appearing to steal items from passengers' luggage. The video shows a TSA officer, Labarius Williams and Jose Gonzalez, opening luggage and appearing to distract passengers as one of them puts something in his pocket that seems to come from one of the bags on the security belt. Law enforcement officials said the officers were captured on security cameras in June, allegedly stealing a total of approximately $600 in cash from passengers as they passed through securities at Miami Airport's Terminal E. The TSA confirmed both men have been removed from their screening duties. Police reports say they were arrested in July following an investigation into a theft scheme. $350. That's the number of migrants that were found crammed and dehydrated in the back of a trailer in southeastern Mexico. According to the country's National Migration Institute, INM, the discovery was made at a toll booth in southern Cosamaloapan, Veracruz, where INM personnel and security officers heard cries and knocking at the back of the unit when they found migrants. On board were women, men, and minors from Guatemala, Ecuador, Honduras, and El Salvador. The trailer and the driver were left at the disposal of the Attorney General's office. The minors and families found in the trailer will remain under the custody of the local family welfare system, while the adults were taken to an INM facility in the state to determine their migratory status in Mexico. Back to the African continent, Independence Day celebrations scheduled for next week in Mali has been canceled by the country's ruling junta Assimi Goïta due to the resumption of hostilities in the north. According to statements, the Council of Ministers said the anniversary would be celebrated in sobriety and in the spirit of national revival. The junta ordered the government to allocate the funds planned for this year's festivities to help victims of recent deadly attacks. The council also discussed the possible mobilization of reservists to counter the militant attacks. Insecurity is rising in northern and central regions despite the deployment of Russia's Wagner Group mercenaries. Russia has been explaining its reason for last month's decision to veto efforts by the United Nations to extend sanctions on Mali. Russia's permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, told the General Assembly that it consistently advocates against preserving endless automatic extensions of sanctions regimes of the Security Council. However, the president of the United Nations General Assembly, Denis Francis, is urging members of the Security Council to recommit to dialogue towards a peaceful resolution in Mali.
The Security Council bears the primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. I urge its members to recommit to dialogue and negotiations, to continue to work towards these goals, towards peace and reconciliation in Mali. Here in the General Assembly, the veto initiative offers the opportunity to be solutions-oriented in this time of crisis.
Instead of working for a compromise, Russia tabled a take-it-or-leave-it last-minute resolution of its own, which would have dissolved the panel of experts. The Russian text received no support, literally not a single other vote. That summarizes better than anything else the legitimacy of Russia's arguments. These latest actions by Russia set a dangerous precedent, as the first time a UN sanctions regime has been ended with the veto. There is no justifiable explanation for this, and today Russia failed to provide one.
It is neither support for Mali nor concern for West African stability that informed Russia's veto of the Mali sanctions renewal, but its continuing efforts to prop up the Kremlin-backed Wagner Group and its mercenaries across Africa. The Mali Sanctions Panel of Experts named the Kremlin-backed Wagner Group in its August 2023 final report. It is no surprise Russia wanted to block further reporting on Wagner, which is a transnational criminal organization backed by Moscow.
Welcome back. The Nigerian Consulate General in Johannesburg, South Africa, Andrew Iddy, has praised the work being done by the Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa. Nicasa is the apex body organization representing Nigerians living in South Africa and Southern Africa. However, the organization has been facing challenges, including navigating South Africa's immigration laws and regulations, including visa and work permit requirements, which can be complex and challenging for the Nigerian community.
It is an organization that has grassroots supports, has structures, reach out to all Nigerians in the country. South Africa has 9 provinces, and you have Nigerians all over these provinces. I am based in Johannesburg. The High Commissioner is based in Pretoria. Cape Town is over 19 hours by road traveling. So you can imagine if this is a situation in Cape Town involving our nationals, 19 hours, it's a long distance. Going by air, about 2 hours. But because of the structures provided by the Nigerian community in South Africa, Nicasa, we have access, we have links with our nationals every day, every hour, every time. As events develop, as situations change, they inform us, and then we relate with the host government and see how fast assistance or whatever it is can be rendered. So Nicasa as a body was formed 2018. And my personal assessment of Nicasa is they've done well. It's not easy, they've done well. I'm sure you will agree with me that Nigeria is a huge country, the largest black country in the world, a country with a population that the world agrees or accepts is over 220 million people. So many ethnic groups. Our strength is in our diversity. So what you see in Nicasa, you actually see Nigeria there. So the EXCO have a huge job to do to manage and handle the diversity in the best way that all their members will be happy to be members of the organization. And that is a role, that is what the Consulate and the High Commission struggles every day to ensure happens. Nigerians should live in harmony, not just with themselves, but also with our host, the South African community. And Nicasa is an arrowhead for achieving those objectives.
That's Nigeria. Thank you.
After 1 year of foreign service in Nigeria, the public affairs officer of the U.S. Consulate, Joseph Kruzik, is leaving the country. To bid him farewell, the International Visitor Leadership Program Alumni Association of the United States Consulate held a farewell ceremony in his honor. This was held alongside the graduation ceremony of participants of the Empower to Prosper Skill Acquisition Program.
It's a farewell gathering in honor of the Public Affairs Officer of the United States Consulate in Nigeria, Joseph Kruzik. Here, at a ceremony organized by the International Visitors Leadership Program, Alumni Association of the United States Consulate, they gather to graduate also 100 participants of the Empower to Prosper Skills Acquisition Program.
In the IVLP family, leadership for us is by the quality of service that is provided and the quality of impact that is made in the lives of people. The IVLP family is such that we don't just stand back and complain and murmur and point accusing fingers, but we look around for any need, any challenge that is to be met, and we always do our best, to make positive impacts and meet those challenges, not just in Lagos, but across the southern region. And we've been doing that year in, year out with the help and the support of the United States Consulate.
In the world of exchange programs that we have in the U.S. government and also here in the U.S. Consulate in Lagos, the International Visitor Leadership Program is regarded as our gold standard, our very, very best program in terms of achieving for the United States and our foreign policy what we want to achieve, which is to create mutual understanding between our own country, the United States, and other countries, in this case, Nigeria.
This is amazing. Keep going, baby.
After display of the projects embarked upon by the participants and awarding of certificates,
Congratulations.
things get sentimental as the IVLP Alumni Association bid Mr. Kruzich goodbye. They first serenade him with his favorite songs.
Fantastic, fantastic. Round of applause, round of applause.
An emotional Kruzich, who's worked overseas for over 30 years, says he's ready to go to his dream home in Florida.
We could have done more, but I have been in working for a very long time, and there comes a point in your career when you need to go home and also spend some of the last years of their life with your parents and others, and so that's what I'm going to do, and I have a really nice setup in Florida.
To end his foreign service, Mr. Kruzich says he'll first embark on a 40-day journey across Africa, one he refers to as a Moses tour, before finally heading to Florida.
An immersive pop-up exhibition titled Batman Unmasked is taking Londoners on a journey through the Caped Crusaders' cinematic history, featuring memorabilia, suits, and gadgets from all of the Dark Knight's movies. The exhibition opens ahead of Batman Day, September 16th, and offers a bat cave of rare treasures from the iconic franchise, showcasing props from the very first Batman movie starring Michael Keaton in 1989 up until Robert Pattinson's most recent iteration of the superhero in 2022. Batman Unmasked also provides a special area with more than 100 comic books for fans, where they can also read newly released Batman Day special editions. There's also a Joker Zone for fans of the infamous supervillain. The exhibition is now opened up until the 17th of September. And that's it for The World Today. I'm Susan Ilian. Have a great weekend.